Hi. Okay, so I had some initial thoughts on the Solar Cycles video. So I put my initial persuasion score kind of high actually. I put it at 8. And I think that I put it that way for a lot of reasons. So mainly because like my first reaction after watching the video was kind of like I was a little freaked out. Like I was like creeped out by the video, and I think that's because the video does a very good job of like applying like fear to its audience and using like different elements to like incite like fear mongering, which I'll talk about later in the rhetorical strategies, but I did want to like mention that right now. And I also think that the average person who doesn't know that much about religion or about astrology and they're just like watching a video to watch it, I feel like they wouldn't A think to really fact check it, and B they would um also be um they would fall for like the fear mongering this video is like inciting. And so they would be at least a little bit persuaded by its message, and but at least believe like some of its claims. And so I wrote down a lot of claims about that they said in the video. I initially thought that most of them were gonna be true. I don't really know why. I think just because like I like gave this video like the benefit of the doubt, which I probably shouldn't have. And so I quickly like looked up these claims, and I found that most of them were false, and I was starting to struggle to find any that were true. So the most like obvious one I think that was false was the video stated that the spring equinox was um on Easter, and that's like I already knew that like it wasn't on that day, but I also like found sources that said that like it's actually on March 21st. And another false one is it said the video said that 100 million people in America believe that the end of the world is coming. And that was like very like hard to believe. I don't know where he got that number from. And then a quick Google search, I found a 2024 Gallup survey that said that there was 235 million people in the U.S. that are Christians, at least 235 million. And so I don't know if maybe the video was referencing like how many Christians are in the US. But either way, the numbers are way off. So there's just no backing to that claim he made whatsoever. Um, the one true one that I found was that he said the star Sirius is the brightest star in the night sky. And that is in fact true. I looked it up in like space.com and other websites like that said it was true. So that one was like the one like true claim I could find. And now onto some rhetorical strategies. I mentioned this earlier, but this video does a very good job of like appealing to fear and its audience. Specifically, like, the background music is very like eerie and creepy, and the visuals are also very, I think, like intentionally old and historical, which kind or which like inherently give like a eerie vibe. Specifically, I noticed that a lot of the clips of like biblical stories were from old silent movies, which I feel like are inherently also a little freaky and a little creepy. So this definitely added like made its audience a little bit like scared, um and a little bit freaked out. And then I also noticed the speaker was using ethos, specifically in like the very beginning, the very end. For the very beginning, he quoted an Egyptologist, which would be like an expert on like ancient Egyptian culture. Um, and then at the very end, he quoted Thomas Paine and Robert G. Ingersoll, which are also like very famously like credible people. So I feel like the inclusion of those names kind of gives more of a backing to his like wild religion claims that he made throughout the video. Some other things I noticed, he uses a lot of the us versus earth, us versus them dichotomy. Specifically in the beginning, he states, "Our masters don't care about you or your family, and we have been misled." So he's saying like our masters and we have been misled to kind of like group him and the audience together as like these victims to this like master, which in this case is like the government and like religion and like any institutions. So it's definitely creating like a victim like side and then like the villain side, and like us and the speaker are both like victims together. And then I definitely also noticed red tagging. Specifically, he seemed to like label Jesus and like Christianity as like the blatant like villains of the story. Specifically because he claimed that Christianity plagiarized a lot of its stories. Specifically, he mentioned that like Christianity has a story of Noah's Ark, and that he also mentioned that story is from the Epic of Gilgamesh. And so kind of by like pointing fingers and like claim Christianity is a bunch of like plagiarists. Like it's like red tagging and like labels them as like the bad guys in the story. And Jesus specifically, like as someone who like doesn't exist, like he's almost like the face of like all these lies. And so he's the evil one. Um and then so yeah, after fact checking, my persuasion score went down to 1 because I quickly realized that like I have no reason to believe a single word the word this guy is saying. Um, and I think a big reason of that is that he bases a lot of his claims on like linear logical reasoning and on like a bombardment of like evidence and facts. And so once like you disprove one of those, like the whole like argument topples. There's like no reason to believe anything he says. So yeah, I dropped it like immediately to a 1. And then some like overall thoughts. I definitely think the audience of this for this kind of video is like someone who's like chronically online. They tend to believe conspiracy theories. I even go as far as saying they're like a bit lonely and sad, and they kind of like are just trying to find meaning in their life, and they're trying to like blame some other source for like their misfortune and for how like bad their life is going, instead of just like looking inwards. I also think this is kind of how a lot of cults work, where they kind of find people that are lonely and sad and chronically online, and they that people who want some kind of like escape and some like meaning in their life, and they'll like entice them into a cult. Like this like conspiracy theory like video genre works similarly, kind of saying like, hey, like I know your life sucks, but you know what, like you can escape your own problems by like blaming this like the concept of religion, and this is why your life sucks, and so you should believe my like conspiracy theory video. um yeah,